Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be the first presenter today. Um, so I'll go straight, the introduction has been made, so I'll go straight to the presentation. So in today's, my first presentation is to set the scene, and this will focus on the summary of the national and international commitment to MSP and applicability to relevant sectors. In this, I'm going to focus mostly on the national obligation, international obligations that are related to MSP. There exist several national and international commitments that directly or indirectly fit into the MSP process or benefit from the MSP process. And in this presentation, that is what I'm going to focus on. The obligations are very broad, so my presentation is more of a summary. So I've broken down the presentation into several parts that will look at the national, the international, and then I'll try to create a link between the national, the international, and the relationship to MSP. Next slide. So first and foremost, in our constitution, especially in chapter 5, their important environmental protection are well embedded in our national constitution. First, the Kenyan constitution obliges that we should ensure sustainable exploitation and utilization of and management of conservation of environmental and natural resources. Also, what is enshrined there is that we should encourage participation um, in the management and protection of the environment. Also, the Constitution obliges that we should establish system for environmental impact assessment and audit monitoring, especially when we are about to do major projects. Also, the Constitution demands that we eliminate process and activities that are likely to be of danger to the environment. So these are some of the key things that the Constitution demands us to do, and they could, in one way, benefit from the processes of the marine spatial planning. Next slide, please. Next slide. So apart from the national obligation, the government also has its own plans that and vision for the development of the country. Of interest are two major visions that the government has: the Vision 2030 and the Big Four agenda. Indeed, the president has so many times recognized the importance of the Big Four agenda. And one of the things that the Big Four agenda has established is that sustainable blue economy is one of the things that can help accelerate the development of the country. And also, under the Vision 2030, it is the interest of the government that we should use the country resources in order to uplift the living standard of the people, increase food security, and also reduce the poverty of the citizens. Next slide, please. There's a slide before that.
Okay.
Yes. So after looking at the national obligation and aspiration, there are also some requirements from the international communities. Resources don't conform to boundaries, so we have international obligations to protect ecosystems and marine space. So Kenya is part to several treaties such as the UNCLOS CITES Convention of Biological Diversity, among others. And most of these treaties are looking at mostly protection of endangered species, sustainable management of shared stock, protection of navigation routes, provision of space for laying infrastructure, and also safety of navigation. For example, the CBD targets, the CBD requires us that by 2030, at least 10% of our costs should be under protection. So this is the requirement from the international community. And also closer home, we also have the Nairobi Convention, which has been spearheading the marine management in our Eastern African coasts. And recently, the Nairobi Convention has urged its partner, after recognition that many countries are focusing on blue economy, to do this blue economy activities in a more sustainable way, especially following the context of the sustainable development goals. Next slide, please. We also have the international aspirations as a, from the international communities, and the most important ones are the SDG. So the SDG, which is the blueprint for us to achieve better and more sustainable development, requires that we reduce marine pollution, we enhance sustainable exploitation of fisheries resources, protect and restore ecosystem, expand our conservation on coastal marine areas, and also increase the economic benefits that are derived from the ocean. Although our focus is on as marine spatial planning and marine communities on SDG 14, the marine spatial planning is also linked to other SDG goals, such that as those that are looking to the reduction of poverty, hunger, good health and well-being for the people, gender equality, and the provision of affordable and clean energy. Next slide, please. So after recognizing all these obligations and aspirations that we have both at the national and international level, what can MSP do for us, or the process of MSP? So by definition, the process of MSP is the process of analyzing and allocation of the marine spaces in a three-dimensional way so as to achieve ecological, economic, and social objectives. Specifically, MSP is looking at the protection of key ecological areas such as coral reefs, seagrass, mangrove, spawning areas, and also to promote sustainable utilization of the ocean activity. So we're looking to see that economic activities happening in the ocean are happening in a sustainable way. There are also the aspect of preservation of cultural heritage. We understand that Kenya is very rich in culture, has a very rich culture, and some of these have to be protected for the current use and also for the future generation. So this is what MSP is looking at to do. So what is are we expecting to get from the MSP? Next slide, please. After we have successfully done an MSP plan, we expect that at the end of it, we are going to have a strategic plan that regulates, manage, and protect the marine environment by allocating space. And also, this is linked to, as we from introductory remarks, that what is important that has been highlighted is provision of data. So at the end of the MSP process, we're going to have baseline data that is going to help us in the decision making. We're also going to have data that we can use to create monitoring for future in terms of trying to gauge if our application of MSP is working towards enhancing the ecological status of our marine spaces. Apart from that, one important aspect of MSP is the stakeholder participation, and which is very good in terms of creating acceptance of the government regulation. And at the end of it, we hope that it will have resolved the multiple use conflict that may be experiencing in the ocean. Other important aspect of the MSP is that after we are done with the plan, this is going to improve our transparency with our development partners and make us a good position where we are able to get more support for our projects. So at the end of it all, we hope that we are able to achieve sustainable management of the ocean. Next slide, please. So as a conclusion, I try here to create a relationship between what we are, the obligation that we have as a country in terms of provision of good good environment to our citizen, and also the obligation that we have at the international level. So how are they interlinked? So at the end of the MSP, before we begin the MSP process, our national obligations and international obligations are supposed to be the guide onto how we are going to put our MSP objective. What do we want to do? These can be derived from our national obligation and from our international obligation. So we are able to get the MSP objective on how we are going to be allocating our activities. If our big four agenda demands that we increase the opportunity for energy production, then this should be some of the objectives that we are putting into the MSP process. And then at the end of it all, after we have done the MSP, we are able to derive new opportunities, new jobs that are able to fulfill the obligation that we have as a country and our inspiration, for example, the Big Four agenda. And also, we are able to fulfill the obligations of the international community, where we are supposed to improve the areas for conservation, protection of endangered species. So this is how I've seen the interlinkage between our national obligation and what we are supposed to get from the MSP process. So to end this presentation, next slide, please. I would like to say that successful planning will help in achieving both national, international obligations and aspirations, and we should be looking forward to having an MSP in Kenya that will enable us to achieve this. Thank you very much.